Vice President, Head of Innovation Asia Pacific, Visa. We also have Ling Lim, she's the Regional Business Director, APAC 500 Global. Rosaline Koo, she's the founder and CEO of CXA Group. James Stroucken, she's the Program Manager of ModusBox. And our moderator to conduct the discussion today is Carrie Liao. She's the Regional Director, Startup Program, APAC 500 Global. So please welcome them here at our online stage. Thank you for being here, ladies.
Hey, thank you, Yamilat. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm just going to start a little bit slower because I think people are still coming in, but good afternoon and good morning to wherever you're from. I'm Carrie. I'm from 500 Global. I take care of programs across the APAC region, and we're very happy to be working with you today to really talk about, women in fintech, especially on partnership models, right? On how they can actually help to really drive innovation and scale fintech companies in APAC. And I think this has been an important conversation as of late because of a lot of the trends that we've been seeing in this industry. So today I am really, really happy to be here with a bunch of amazing women who have been, change makers in this industry, driving for a lot of innovation. And I want to give them a bit of time to talk about themselves, where they're from, what they do. And I'll start out with Ciyi Lim. She's the Vice President, Head of Innovation, APAC of Visa. So over to you, Ciyi. Say a few words about yourself.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. Happy New Year to all of you. So I'm Ciyi. I head up the innovation team for the Asia Pacific region at Visa. In the innovation team, we're working on some of the most exciting developments in the payment space, from sustainability propositions to new payment flows for small as well as large businesses, to new data solutions, as well as the whole new world of cryptocurrencies, DeFi, and so on. Prior to Visa, I worked as a strategy consultant at Bain & Company. Back to you, Carrie.
Thank you, Ciyi. Welcome. And of course, we have Rosaline Koo, founder and CEO of CXA Group with us today. Rosaline, hi.
Hi. So I used to run Mercer and Marsh benefits to 14 countries, and we grew 800%. But the problem was clients, which were corporates, kept complaining about the entire insurance industry. One of my Chinese clients actually told me that they bought insurance for their employees, but what happened is they discovered too many late-stage cancers. So I tried to convince my firm to actually give me $10 million to fix this, to have not just insurance, but to connect early detection and disease prevention and wellness, in addition to paying for treatment. So I tried and I failed for 5 years to do that. So I spent my own $10 million to build CXA, to build my own dream.
Extremely inspiring, Rosaline. I've been a fan of the work that you've been trying to do and doing. So looking forward to hearing a lot more from you in a bit. Of course, we have with us Jane. Jane Stroucken is a program manager at ModusBox. Hi, Jane. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you very much and Happy New Year to everybody. So I'm the program manager, as Carrie said, for ModusBox. And really our goal, our vision is to enable financial participation amongst a much wider community than just the sort of banked community, reimagining financial services, using partnerships with existing corporate type financial providers to enable the modular loop solution to be used in those kind of environments where there are a number of unbanked people, to give them access to finance, which immediately changes their world completely. So we've done a lot of work in Africa. We've done a lot of work in the APAC region as well. We're very busy right now in Myanmar enabling their new OnePay solution. And we look forward to further encouraging women to be part of the work that we do in connection with the ModusBox Foundation. Thanks. Back to you, Carrie.
Extremely exciting work. Looking forward to also hearing a lot more on how that can kind of pan out. And of course, last but not least, Ling Lim, she's the Executive Director of Global Programs at 500 Global, my colleague and friend. Ling, welcome.
Hi, thanks, Carrie. And good to see all of you, Jane, Rosaline, and Ciyi. Happy New Year. So my name is Elaine Lim, and at 500 Global, we are one of the world's most active venture capital fund, having invested in over 2,600 companies globally. But what we believe is that, founders doesn't just require capital. They require connections. They require different kinds of value add, helping them scale, helping them hire, helping them access really new customers, new corporate clients, as well as new markets and new talent as well. So at 500 Global, we serve to not just provide capital, but also provide a whole holistic flywheel approach to adding value to startups all around the world. And I've been working a lot with governments as well as corporates globally to help enable that and connect them to startups to really innovate and change the world. I think that word has been coming up a fair bit. Thanks, Carrie.
Thank you, Elaine. I think that's going to be kind of like the strand of thought that we're going to have today on how people can come together, work together, build this kind of meaningful partnerships that can really just, move or shake the world a little bit, right? So let's dive right into it. In this first part, just to kick things off, I really wanted to talk about today's topic on innovation and fintech, right? How these two really big words kind of come together. Now, we all know that fintech has been around for a while. So where do we kind of think this is going in terms of innovation, right? And what does that really mean? Are we kind of moving into the next level of it, the next wave of innovation, scaling, adoption? What are some of the things that we are seeing? Maybe we'll start with Ciyi first. At Visa, what are you kind of seeing in the industry right now?
So of course, with the pandemic, things have changed so significantly over the past 2 years. Some of the changes in consumer behavior in particular, right? The whole adoption of e-com and mobile commerce from demographics that typically didn't use these channels to buy their goods. I think the kind of key metric that we keep on hearing is that we saw 3 years of acceleration and growth within a period of 3 months in this space. And some of the stats that we have analyzed through the Visa payment system is that 1/3 of online shopping in Southeast Asia from new buyers, 1/3 of online shopping in Southeast Asia actually came from new buyers in 2020. That means people who never used to buy their goods online at all. And 80% of that intend to keep shopping online. So that behavior is sticking through even when things open up, when lockdowns finish, and so on and so forth. We're seeing these trends happen not just on the consumer side, but also on the business side, with businesses really turbocharging their digitalization, being able to offer their customers goods online. So a lot of small mom and pop shops, for example, going online for the first time. And we see platforms like Shopify really have a huge surge in growth of businesses signing up on their platforms. So all of that is the catalyst, if you will, for this new wave of fintech acceleration. And that just stands up a new platform for things like buy now, pay later. Of course, I'm going to talk about more payment related innovations here. Buy now, pay later, which is already maturing, arguably, to new ways of paying, from crypto to other real-time payment systems, as well as, of course, different local and cross-border card schemes, to things like crypto, NFT, and the metaverse. So those are all the things that we have our eye on in Visa.
Thank you. What an exciting time, right? Crypto, NFT, cross-border payments, all kinds of new models and platforms coming up. I want to kind of touch on that a little bit also, right? Well, not crypto and NFT, that's not what this conversation is for, but over to Rosaline, right? Have you, because of the kind of things that you've been seeing in the industry, kind of moved your business along just to say, hey, because this is new, this may be where the trend is going?
Yeah, I mean, we've actually seen a wave of change from earlier. When I started 8 years ago, none of the banks and the insurers were really innovating. But after the pandemic, I see a massive urgency from them to truly innovate instead of the lipstick on the pig that they were doing before. So whereas before I had to go after the corporations with my tech, now that we perfected our tech, and with the pandemic happening and no one walking into the bank branches, no one wanting to see, insurance agents, the banks and the insurance companies are white labeling our platform now for their corporate clients, because what they want to do is not just sell to the SMEs and their corporates. They're actually trying to use our data to sell to all the employees of their enterprise clients. I've never seen that before, but once you have data, you can actually sell more savings and loans, even though you start with health. So we're seeing a massive step change in the last couple of years.
That's really interesting, actually, because now what you're talking about is not just the fintech space itself innovating, but it's crossing industries as well, right? It's spanning across different
Exactly.
industries,
Exactly.
affecting different kinds of, areas, right, where people have not thought about before. And I think that's really
Yes.
exciting to think about. Elaine, I have a question for you, right? In this, kind of world we're living in right now, where everything seems to be moving in that space, where do you think are the biggest, gap areas or opportunity areas, right, that fintech, companies can look into?
Oh gosh, there's just so much, right? And I think before that, just what Rosaline talked about, regarding how fintech touches across all different industries, one area in which we've seen quite a little bit of activity. So I'm going to answer this one first, and then just because there's so much to handle, we'll talk about other opportunities later on. But in terms of cross industries, one really exciting one that we're looking at is actually sustainability, which again cuts across so many different industries. And then what can banks do or financial institutions do in relation to that? So for example, a bank who currently serves the, call it the agriculture sector or the mobility sector itself, there are problems in there where traditionally they couldn't reach farmers, right, who have unmet financing needs. They couldn't assess all this credit risk because there's a lack of farmer level data. Now there are opportunities in there, not just in terms of providing alternative credit scoring system, but also just startups that have solutions providing alternative data in the first place, startups that are leveraging software to capture evidence of how a farmer or a vehicle manufacturers' decarbonization efforts, startups that can serve as a certifying authority, right, using farmer level data or manufacturer level data that can then be translated into better financial access. So fintech really is such a big word that when you split it across industries, across it, honestly, a lot of things can fall under fintech these days.
You've brought out a really good case example, actually, and I think that is kind of where we're also kind of seeing those trends, right? Now that we're able to kind of cross border, cross industry, we are able to reach a lot more people than before. I want to kind of hear from Jane. You mentioned that, the work that you guys have been doing at ModusBox, have been actually doing that for a while now, right? Trying to reach people where they are underrepresented, right? So in these areas, how do you think, like, what has been kind of scaled in the last 2 years has kind of helped what ModusBox has been doing?
Yeah, it's a really interesting discussion. We've really focused on trying to ensure two things. One is that the cross-border element of money transfers is easily available at low cost to people who are working outside of their home country, for example, to try to transfer funds back into their own country without paying exorbitant fees. That's the one thing. The other is to try to help bring players who traditionally are not on an even playing field into a system or a switch that makes the small MFI play at the same level as the large bank, because normally they just can't compete in any way. So cutting out a lot of the sort of fee-based structure, not that there are no fees, but enabling people to have access to innovative ways to connect to banking, innovative ways for their clients to transfer funds and enable them to feel like they're part of what was an out of reach facility for them previously. I think that we've seen that particularly in Tanzania. We've seen that in Rwanda, we're seeing it, well, it's starting there now. We've seen it quite extensively in Myanmar, that we've been able to reach people and run an education program in parallel to that, because that's really important as well, that people who are not comfortable with fintech don't feel easily aligned to the concept of money just being sent from a mobile phone to somebody else, and that it's really going to get there. And so that part of the work that we do is part of the innovation. It's making sure that the people who we're trying to reach really feel safe with the technology that we are helping them to access. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, Jane. I think you brought up a really good point, right? When we talk about innovation, we sometimes tend to forget that there are people who are left behind because of, the lack of, I guess, I'm not say lack of, challenges, right? That we actually have to overcome first before we actually implement any new innovation, right? So maybe on this, I want to kind of carry on talking about this a little bit. CE, what are some of your thoughts, right? You talked about all the kind of trends that are coming. Are there challenges that you think, the fintech space will kind of face when we try to move so fast, right?
We work with a lot of startups at Visa, of course, and then through this new program that we're rolling out called the Accelerator Program, our key focus is helping fintechs to grow across markets. And we see a lot of challenges with regards to scaling in this area, particularly when a fintech that's been successful in one market tries to take that same formula and replicate it in another market. Part of the problem really is just the vast diversity across the Asia Pacific region, just the number of regulations, languages, different type of consumer preferences that, very differently, even if you just cross the border from Thailand to Vietnam, for example, or even just the number of incumbent banks, partners in the ecosystem, wallets they need to deal with, it is very, very fragmented. So getting the right enablers and partners in the ecosystem to help you tackle and address those problems is really key. And really our aim is to make it as easy as possible for the startups to kind of get to that stage where, it's interoperable across different markets, right? They can just do what they do best without worrying so much about trying to find the right openers to each different, set of regulators and so on.
That's a really good point. And of course, regulations, right? And the kind of enablers within each ecosystem is always going to be very different. Rosaline, how many, I guess, places, is CXA Group in right now, and what kind of different challenges have you faced when you try to scale?
Oh, it's exactly what Ciyi said. I have now that we work with banks and insurers and healthcare company, and we're touching all three. I have so many different regulators. So they're different in every country. And Ciyi's right, we have to localize providers in each country. So the regulators have different regulations on data privacy, but also on health data. And no one wants to lose their health data or the financial data. And I touch both. But I found that I do have to localize to local insurers and local clinics and hospitals and health screeners and wellness providers. So everything changes, even the payment gateway. But at least the tech can stay the same because I need the same types of data in every country. And we figured out what's configurable and what can be built in a content management system as we change languages and currencies. So that's what Americans don't realize when they come to Asia. Every country is different. So I actually think Asians have an advantage in Asia because they know this already and they're not trying for one size fit all.
Thank you, Rosaline. I love that. I think it's a very real, situation I think that we faced in this region. Elin, do you want to share a bit about, like the work that we've been doing at 500, right? Scaling across, regions and then being hyper local at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, well, again, we'll never be able to cover that all, but one thing I think we've realized is that, so at 500 Gold, just to give you a context, we've been running market access programs for our startups. So what this entails could be Korean startups interested in finding the right market to expand to, perhaps the US or Southeast Asia. Similarly, Japanese startups looking to enter Southeast Asia. And again, Southeast Asia really loosely, but specific countries within Southeast Asia, or going over to the US. We run programs like that helps them identify first and foremost, which is the right market to go into. What do I need to get in order to enter the new market? What's my strategy entering to there? And also connecting to local customers in these new markets as well. And of course, all the other professional services. What we've realized is that first and foremost, really identifying the right market to enter into is a big thing that not a lot of startups are able to or have the resources in order to identify that well. And then secondly, also depending on your business itself, right? The way that you enter a new market can also be really different. Do you just need a sales rep office, right? Or do you need to have, and are you well suited to actually hire, or sorry, not hire, but transport someone from your core team, bring them over to the US, set it up, hire there? Or do you definitely need a GM local in the market from the very start? And how do you then preserve all this culture? Or perhaps you don't even need an office in the US itself. And you can actually execute a lot of things virtually remotely from here. So we've seen, for example, our SaaS startups who are able to do that without having a dedicated office in the US, but on conversely, we've also seen startups who need to go over, at least have a founder in the new market, understanding what are the changes that's going to be required before expanding. And I think that's the other thing, right? Adaptability, the whole concept. I know, Rosaline, you would have gone through all of this in every new market that you enter into, testing the hypothesis, retesting it, validating it again, finding out perhaps, even a completely new market segment. We had one startup here in Singapore who originally worked a lot with the big brands in Singapore itself, but then going over to the US, obviously lost a competitive edge, but realized that they could play in the SME market. But that, I think that conviction that the founder needs to have to say like, hey, we can't apply the same methods, we can't access the same markets. Let's see where our underlying tech can play, where's a competitive edge, and let's tweak it accordingly. But definitely huge respect for all the founders who are constantly trying to access new markets and expand this way.
Absolutely. Thanks, Elaine. I like that you use the word adaptability. I think that's kind of like the key word, or, in this pandemic, right, where we're all, trying to adapt to new ways of working, new ways of partnerships, new people that we're meeting online for the first time, never seen in real life. I think that's kind of where we are today. Where do you guys think, right? Just question to, all ladies here, right? How do you think, living in that digital world, right, partnerships can actually still grow? I think we were so used to actually face-to-face interaction, meetings, and coffee sessions. How do we then build a solid, trusting relationship, right, with a partner in a different country, different border, different time zone? How do we do that? Jane, how have you been doing that?
I think it's a unique challenge. So ModusBox has been a remote company from the word go. So we've got people in Seattle, we've got people in South America, South Africa, East Africa, Asia, all over the place. So we've had to try to, as a company, collaborate across time zones, people, whatever. And then we move into a market that is completely foreign in terms of concept, but online. So you don't have the opportunity to meet in a hotel, meet at a business, have a chat, understand the people. And really what we've done is we've adopted an approach of saying our key advantage is to make sure we have a partnership in country, whether it's two people or a small innovative company in country who understand the requirements in that country, because no matter where you're coming from, the requirements of the people are never the same, ever. So we go in with assumptions about what we think people need, but invariably you're wrong. So having a local partner and having people who understand what is critical to that market is the key to building relationships. And the minute you've got that and you start listening and you start enabling them to tell you rather than the other way around, you start to develop that trust relationship. And for me, that is key. I think Rosaline said it as well, like going into a market is not about coming in with a solution, but understanding and adapting your solution to what is required in every market, because it's always different.
I love that actually, that you're not coming into a market with your solution, but you are there to listen and then adapt accordingly, right? I'm sure, Rosaline, you agree with that. Is that what, you've seen that happening for you guys as well?
Yeah, we were really lucky because it's only in hindsight that we knew we were lucky. We're doing it, we didn't. But the strategics who invested in us became our anchor partners in certain countries. And then when we were successful in one country, they took us to other countries. So one of our Thai partners, Thai investors, became our anchor client in Thailand. And now they bought the largest firm in Indonesia in their industry, and we just follow them and replicate, but we have to localize to a new market. Luckily, there's 1,000 people on the ground already who can tell us requirements. And so that's what happened to us. Even when we had corporates, let's say Seagate, they took us to 6 countries because they were there. And so we just replicated, but localize. And so if you get a happy client who are multiple countries, we just keep following them. So that's made it easier for us as we move from place to place.
And I think that brought up a really good point that I was going to mention as well, that, we always think about, I think from startups point of view, if I build a partnership with someone, hey, that's one client. But this is actually an ongoing relationship, right? That's long lasting, that takes you from region to region,
Exactly.
And, Visa is an extremely good example. You're everywhere, right? So Ciyi, what are some of your thoughts? How does Visa partner with startups like this, helping them scale, and in such a timely manner so quickly, especially in the last 2 years, we have seen that happen.
Yeah, I think everything that Rosaline, of course, Jane mentioned really resonates with the way at Visa we approach the partnerships we have with our startups. So ModusBox, where Jane is of course one of our first startups that we had in this accelerator program that we launched last year. This program is meant to help in a very kind of short time frame of 6 months, really understand the startup, what we can do together, and most importantly, have a very strong commercial focus. So we work on a proof of concept together and try and launch something ideally in the market, or take some steps towards launching something in the market. So as you say, Carrie, Visa, we're lucky enough to have operations across most of the markets that you can think of, definitely those in Asia Pacific, right? So part of the kind of way we make ourselves available to our startups is to have our local market teams sit down with the startups to kind of talk about the business requirements that they are seeing in the market. So you get that local intelligence, local intel that allows you then to customize your solution, your platform to the local needs. But not only that, but we also want to put our money where our mouth is and make concrete introductions of the startups to our large base of clients, right? We have relations with a lot of the large incumbent banks, but also increasingly a lot of the large digital wallets, the large merchants in each market. So those introductions, more often than not, are really the most valuable part to the startup, because they form the sales pipeline for the startup in the market. It's the starting point, right, to really launch your business operations. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, how we see the way we can best drive value for startups in a really concrete way to accelerate their growth.
Thanks, Yi. Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of things, right? Because I think when you first mentioned the accelerator, that's education. And I think that's what, Jane brought up before, right? And you mentioned, reality of commercialization, right? This is not just something that you dream of in your head, it's not a solution that you think is ideal. It's actually going to work. You're testing it out. And then actual connections and introductions, because people need to know right enablers, like someone mentioned before, in the right market, right? And I love that these are kind of the three things, that really helped startups move. Jane, we share a bit about your experience, in the accelerator. Have you seen like the education, the commercialization, the actual introductions? Has that kind of, scaled, the way ModusBox has thought about going in?
It was an amazing experience, that 6 months of working with Visa. They just the access to a bunch of thinking that was completely different to the from an education perspective. It was educating us. It was the mentoring that came with the program. It was the facilitation of how the visa system works, how we can use our solution to connect into. We provided a cross-border solution that enabled visa clients to make payments into the Philippines, and from Singapore to the Philippines, and but using the Visa network and the Mojaloop solution, and we proved that worked. And then we were introduced through Visa to clients in the Philippines who are the large bank there, and their Sinify network that they're busy establishing, and how we can. So the opportunity that 6 months experience provided for us, with very little effort on our part. All we did was work with the Visa team, and they enabled us to come up with the few changes that we needed to do to make that innovation work. It was a spectacular experience, and it has led to ongoing support and ongoing relationships and ongoing doors opening for the future, which it really has been. I would recommend that as a potential place for any startup to move through. It really was a spectacular experience. Yeah.
Thanks, Jane. Yeah, Ciyi looks really happy to hear that. I'm happy too. I think I think it's been an amazing journey, right? For, ModusBox, for Visa as well, to learn from you guys. I think there's always been, very encouraging, right? And of course, I think with the kind of work that we do here, in the fintech space, guys are always thinking about, where you can best make impact with the work that you do, which is why we always talk about scaling, right? Because you don't just want to, keep it right within one ecosystem. You want to move it across borders. Where do you think, something interesting I wanted to share when I was, thinking about this topic, on women in fintech, right? From a 2021 Deloitte study, right, 30% of the fintech workforce is female, but only 17% of senior fintech roles are held by women. Okay, considering we're all women on the panel today, less than 5% of these 70 people are actually CEOs. So a really close topic close to my heart that I want to kind of start talking about is how do we encourage more women to take on leadership positions in the fintech space, right? Maybe we start with, how did it happen for you guys? Did it something that happened naturally, or did you really have to put in a lot of work to get to where you are today? Let's start with Rosaline. Yeah.
So I thought I was a good presenter because I was in corporate life for 30 years. But when I first started pitching, the Kauffman Foundation was one of the judges, and he came up to me and said, "You need to learn to pitch like a man." And I'm like, what? Why would I want to pitch like a man? And so he said, "Look, the female founders in our portfolio perform better than the men. But when they pitch, he typically multiply what their estimates by 10, whereas for men, he divides by 10. So he told me, you just underestimate yourself. So if you don't pitch like a man, you're not going to get the money." So, I mean, I was so shocked, but I learned to pitch like a man. And after that, I got money. So he was right. We can't underestimate our worth and our market.
Yeah, absolutely, Rosaline. I think that is, and I would say, when I would think I've heard this so many times before, right, from female founders or entrepreneurs saying that, you need to pitch like a man more, right? But I don't think they mean the gender, they mean the confidence, the,
Exactly.
exactly, right? that ability to just stand up there and act like everything is going to be yours, I think that's kind of the what we're trying to do here. Elaine, what are some of your thoughts on, encouraging women to take up leadership positions, right, in the kind of world that we live in now?
Oh gosh, again, great topic. One of my favorite topics to talk about, right? I think to me, there are three things. And the question also is a little bit loaded because it says, how do we encourage female to take up leadership positions? Sometimes it's also not within our own control as well. So when we say, how do we encourage women to take up leadership positions itself? What we are saying is that the onus is on the female to actually stand out and stand up. And of course, there's enough literature out there, led by obviously Cheryl's Lean In book that talks about how women need to be more confident and need to be out there and ask for a promotion, ask for a pay rise, even when they're 75% there, rather than wait until they're 150% there. But I think, so that I think is a baseline. However, I think it is then also for us as females in leadership positions to think about how we can be mentors and coaches to the other females in the organization as well. To be honest with you, I used to look up, not say used to, but I looked at this book by Indra Nooyi a lot, right? So I've always listened to her talk and I read her recent book. And it was a little bit disappointing to me because it felt as if that how she got to where she was, apart from hard work, was really because she had great male mentors who really saw the gem in her and then brought her up. So again, I think the bottom line is that it is a collective effort, right? Females themselves need to stand up and need to really put themselves out there even when they're not completely ready yet. But at the same time also, we all have a role to play in terms of really lifting up the women around us, below us, and bringing them up to be leaders and setting that role example. But along with that, I think the other thing, just to elaborate a little bit on or tap onto what Rosaline was sharing as well. One thing I also, that's also advice I've heard upon a lot. But one thing I would just say is that sometimes it's also not just females that need to do this, but really any founder out there, right? Learn how to pitch to different VCs, learn how to adapt. I've made a mistake of sticking to my story too much. So one thing for sure, I think generally, I read Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why, right? And absolutely loved it. So every single pitch that I did, I started with why. But I wasn't then paying attention to my listeners, to a VC who's like, what is this like why thing, right? Why do I want to care? So I think the advice here is really adapt to who you're pitching to. And honestly, every single VC investor, partner, corporate is different. In fact, even within a corporate itself, the different people you're speaking to will care about different things. In a VC as well, the partner level versus the associate level will care about different things. So it's about adapting your pitch. And one thing, and so along with that as well, how do you know what the VCs care about or what that person you're pitching to actually cares about? It's also a lot of networking and finding out what are the trends out there, what are investors investing in these days, and why do they invest in that? I mean, honestly, I think a lot of us on this call would have looked at an investment and said, why did they invest in that startup? It doesn't even look that great. But there's definitely something in that pitch that captivated that investor. And the question is what is this key trend or consumer change behavior that's happening that made this investor feel that this founder and this startup has it? And then how then do we adapt our pitch in order to be more in line with that? I think case in point, a lot of nowadays with fintech being so in demand as well, there's also a lot of startups who are formally just focusing on SaaS, just focusing on creator economy, and they can also now call themselves a fintech startup. I just saw a news recently of how a content creator platform just raised a lot of money, and they started out really just being content creator platform, right? Tools to enable influencers to create content. But they saw the huge demand and interest in fintech, and they thought, why don't I also include this fintech element in it? And they raised money. I'm not saying that that's the only reason why, but it's that whole adaptability by observing through trends and through networking and listening and sharing with other founders and mentors out there.
Thank you, Elaine. Really, there is a lot to unpack here. You are right. This was a loaded question because then it feels like the onus is put on female, right? And I like the fact that you talked about, mentorship, like women giving back to other women in the community. That has always been, something that is, I think, a lot of people here, do, right? Especially with this, female entrepreneur worldwide, right? As a community coming together to really support female founders. Yeah. So, CE, what have you seen, right, in Visa working with so many startups? Right? Are there challenges, that women in fintech face a lot more? How have, the partnership with Visa kind of helped them mitigate that or, help them to move forward?
Yeah, we really do see the challenge here. For example, right now we have our open call running, looking for our new startups for our next program in the new year. And I think less than 2% of the applicants have female founders or females in the C-suite, right? So a lot of the pool that exists today, you see the huge skew towards men. So in a way, at some point, by the time they come to Visa, we already see that bias having been in action, right? We are not in at the early stage where you get to, influence the formation of the C-suite and so on and so forth. But I have to say that the females that we have worked with, such as, of course, Jane from ModusBox, and then another of our startups open in the last year, they are incredibly impressive. I think they work much harder than the men in some cases. Your point, Rosaline, where women tend to underestimate themselves. They do a lot of the work behind the scenes, but when it comes to taking credit, sometimes the men are a little bit more just on the front foot on that side. So I think there's so much that women can offer, especially when it comes to delivery, execution, accurate forecast, everything that something like a strategic partner like Visa really values. There's so much that women bring to the table that we want to see more women. And I think across the Visa organization, we've done a lot of work in supporting some of the female initiatives, such as the he for she as one of the International Women's Day themes in the past few years, and some of the female founder organizations, particularly run out of the US but run globally. So there's a lot of kind of good intentions to help out where we can, but potentially we still don't have the right answers in terms of what is the best way to address this and how can we see those numbers in terms of female founders and females in the C-suite really tick up.
It is an ongoing challenge for sure, and it's a journey, right, that we're all kind of on. So I do not think there's one, solid answer as well. This was a tough question, I'll acknowledge that. So we have maybe about 7 minutes more, right? I do have one last question for you ladies, but before that, for everyone else in the room, I would love for you to be part of this conversation. Share with us in the chat, if you're a female founder yourself, what are some of the challenges you have faced, right? What are you looking to try and do this year for yourself, to really step in, step up, do more, right? And also, if you have questions for them, the ladies today here with us, please type them in the chat. Okay, I'm very happy to kind of take them right before we end off today. So I'll let questions come in. In the meantime, I do want to kind of, maybe kind of sum it up for everybody, right? What is that, advice that you would give to our female fintech entrepreneurs here today what should you be doing? What's that one thing you should be doing? Jane, what do you think?
Don't try and be a man. Be yourself, because as a woman, you have so much to offer, and be confident to start small. Don't think you have to be a global entity. You can be small, you can start small, you can grow with your own sense of confidence, and be confident about it. There is so much space in the fintech world. As Elin said, so much is encompassed by that one word. And there is so much space for capable, confident women, whether it's as leaders, whether it's as techies, whether it's as business entrepreneurs, whether it's as supporters, mentors. There is so much space. Take the space and bring your uniqueness as a woman to that space. Don't be afraid. Do it. Be brave.
Thanks, Jane. I love that. Rosaline, what about you?
So I started CXA after 50 and I just turned 60. So I want to encourage women in financial services, and there's like a lot of very successful women, to come and start a fintech, because you know what's wrong with your bank and your firm. And you're always you feel like compliance and legal has taken over your firm, but why not come out, and change things, because the opportunities are endless. And I have to say, I've learned more in my time in this startup than I have in all my time before that. And I'm not young. So I think this is the best thing to learn a lot about yourself and the industry and others, right? You're compressing time. So it's worth doing. It really is worth doing. So leave your comfort zone and come into the startup world.
Thank you, Rosaline. Happy birthday, by the way, and congratulations.
Thank
This
Oh,
is
happy birthday.
yeah,
Lucky you.
and I love that because so many, almost all startups are born out of trying to solve a problem, that they personally face.
Yes.
So I think this is the time, right? I love that. Well, Eileen, what about you? What's that one thing you would say?
I would say, so apart from the three, I guess, that I talked about earlier on, right? Like networking, adapting, right? I think the other one, and also really putting yourself out there, be curious, be confident. But I think at the same time, what I feel that women generally have this superpower in is, I think, the ability to build strong communities, right? Be authentic and build strong communities. And that is a huge underserved market. So if you're able to build this community and join conversations, lead conversations, right, around Web3, crypto, blockchain, NFT, drive those conversations, and then lift everyone up. I think that's also another way that, apart from you being a founder, setting up your own fintech, you can then also actually reduce or narrow the investment gender gap, basically. And that's also a huge win for the fintech community as a whole. So really drive those conversations, use your superpower to build out this community and educate more and more women in the financial space itself. I think that also helps to really drive, financial inclusion. And then lastly, if you have daughters, please have conversations with them early on about money. I think the key here is early education.
Oh, 100%. Yes, I think that's so important. I learned about finance way too late in my life. Yeah, way too late. CE, what about you? What's that one thing you would say?
Oh, everybody has already had such amazing advice. I don't know what else I can add. I guess to me, maybe just to sum it all out, I would say to trust yourself and trust your instincts. Trust that you deserve a seat at the table and that your opinions are valid and valuable and that you can drive an impact. I think a lot of the confidence gap, I think, is the main thing that, just speaking generically, that holds women back in terms of the risk-taking behavior and the sense of entitlement that sometimes we feel our male counterparts have, right? So that trust in yourself, I think, is very important.
Thank you, CE. I love that. I do have like a 1 or 2 minute. I want to kind of combine a few questions we're getting. I think what Ling mentioned before was an example of startups who are not fintech, but because, of seeing the opportunities, they managed to adapt and incorporate fintech. Does anyone on this panel, can answer Yuki's question on what are some examples of companies you've seen doing that? Anybody?
I guess the thing that comes to mind potentially is when there's a platform. It could be a marketplace, e-commerce, or as you were saying, right, Eileen, like a content creator type of platform. And then because you need to buy and sell on that platform, they have some kind of payment feature and facilitation on that. That I think is the first step for many startups when they say moving into fintech. So you see a lot of these marketplaces have a payment feature, then they start to have their own wallet, then they start to use their wallet in other places, they have their own loyalty points. So that is one mode of entry, but I don't know whether you guys have any other examples and ideas that come to mind.
If the ladies don't have, I actually saw something really interesting. Because of NFTs and blockchain, art galleries are now able to, leverage onto fintech to kind of make things move for them, right? I think that is a really exciting space to think about as well. Okay, well, Hazel does have a question. Maybe we can just end off with that one and then we can let CE take over. I think we can talk a bit about the program, how they can kind of help, anybody here interested today to move forward. We talked about impact earlier, right? and education, to girls and younger females, right? Have we seen successful fintech startups interested in supporting, right, organizations to really impact, young females to get them started early? Is there anything that kind of comes to mind? I wonder if
the one that I
Mhm.
the one that I think of is an organization called Haipipo in Uganda that runs a woman in tech program on a yearly basis. They do hackathons with women. They do actually fabulous work, and they've really done a lot of work to bring women safely and confidently into technology in Uganda and boost their individual small startup organizations. So that's the one that I can think of off the top of my head, yeah, which works really well. Yeah.
Thanks, Jane. That's a good example. Yeah, so I hope that kind of answers Hazel and Yuki's question. Maybe I'll hand over to CE, but before that, I want to kind of, sum up what we kind of learned today, what I learned, right? I felt like I took away so much from just listening to the four of you. From what CE said, education is important, right? So it's not just, starting young, but throughout a startup's journey, that education is always going to be important. Having that support from the community and mentorship, that's also equally important. Connections and introduction, right? However, for any founder, whether you're female or non-female, right? Join the conversations, lead the conversations, do not underestimate yourselves, always listen. And of course, the keyword for today, adaptability, right? Hope everyone can, stay adaptable for the rest of the year, but also confident and trust that you, every single individual person matter. So over to you, CE. I'm sure you have a bit of a thing to share with us about the program, and I would love to hear about that as well.
Sure. I'll keep this really short and sweet because we've been talking a little bit about the program throughout the panel session. So at Visa, we have this accelerator program that we launched for the first time in 2021. It's a very, what we call, high touch and low volume program. Out of all the startups out there, we only select a handful of startups to work with every year. We work for a period of around 6 months. Is really intensive in terms of the effort that at Visa we put in to enable the startups. So we really put our senior leaders, our cross-functional teams at the startup's disposal, to ask for their expertise. We make our local teams available. We also help forge connections, as we mentioned, to the local marketplaces where the startups are interested in expanding. So for 2022, we've just launched the open call about a couple of months ago. So applications have been coming through at a rapid click. We are in the last week of applications right now. So you have until the end of the week to apply. But yeah, we're really hoping that we see more female entrepreneurs really sign up for this program. We're really excited about the different opportunities across fintech that, as Visa, we can help enable with the startups. There's so many new pain points, use cases to address that we can do together. And I think there's a lot of win-win that we can generate in this space. So that's my very quick summary. I know in the chat, there is a link for more information. And before we end off, there's also a short video clip that we can play where you can hear directly from our startup cohort of 2021.
Brancas applied for the Visa Accelerator program because we saw an opportunity to combine Brancas's open banking technology expertise with a global payments partner and global network of financial institutions. And so we found it to be a fantastic opportunity to join forces with Visa and bring open banking technology across APAC.
The sheer magnitude of the contribution from the Visa team was incredible. They were able to mobilize resources from tech to business development across the Asia Pacific region for us.
Through the Visa Accelerator program, we got to interact with a lot of global leaders at Visa as well as mentors who helped us rethink our pricing and go-to-market strategies. And that was something that stood out for us as part of the Accelerator program.
Visa's market insights, executive mentorship, and technical expertise have helped Digit Secure further strengthen its capabilities, fine-tune go-to-market strategies, improve brand perception and visibility, and open doors to new clients and markets in Asia Pacific.
If you're a fintech startup serious about scaling your business cross-border, then join the Visa Accelerator program because it will give you unparalleled access to payments that you quite frankly wouldn't get anywhere else.
Well, thanks for that. So thank you so much to, all the ladies here today. Thank you to all of you for joining us. I had a wonderful time spending, with these women this afternoon. And of course, thank you to Phil for co-hosting this with us as well. I will hand back over to Yamilet so she can kind of, close us off. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Carrie. And indeed, it was just such a wonderful conversation. And going back to Hazel's question, I just have off top of my head, Girls in Tech. They are a US company, but they also have a chapter here in Macau. So if you are interested in pushing for early start for fintech development for girls in tech, it's a good one. And well, thank you for Ciyi, Carrie, Rosaline, obviously Elin and Jane for being here with us. Remember, if you want to keep connecting with our speakers, that is possible with the Female Entrepreneurs Worldwide platform and community. You keep on learning with them. Rewatch this video if you want to learn more. And also, we're going to have more events coming up soon. This is just the start of the year 2022 with a big bang. So thank you once again, our wonderful moderator. And Ines, she's here on the floor for organizing this amazing day. Thank you, and we'll see you very soon next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.